I never thought I'd be the type of person to second guess my marriage. But life has a funny way of shaking things up when you least expect it, doesn't it? For the most part, I had it all: security, love, comfort, and the certainty that Mark and I had built something unshakable. After nearly 15 years of marriage, I never once doubted his loyalty or questioned his commitment. How could I? We had always been each other's safe haven, or so I thought. It was a regular Thursday evening when everything began to shift, though I didn't realize it at the time. The moment was subtle, small enough that if I hadn't been paying attention, I might have brushed it off as nothing. But there I was, standing in the dim light of the garage, trying to make sense of what I was sensing. I had just come back from picking up groceries and was headed to the car to grab my purse before going upstairs for bed. As I swung open the car door, there it was. A faint, sweet, floral scent, soft, almost delicate, hanging in the air. Not a hint of the usual scent of the leather upholstery, or the faint mustiness of old receipts and coffee cups that filled the cabin. No, this was something else entirely. Something unfamiliar. I leaned in closer, taking a slow, deliberate breath. It was as if the fragrance had settled into the very fabric of the car, like someone had lingered there recently, but it wasn't my perfume. I couldn't remember the last time I'd even worn something like it. I stood there for a moment, rooted in place, my mind racing. Could it be a coincidence? Was I overreacting? I shook my head, telling myself that it wasn't anything. Mark had probably had someone in the car earlier that day. Maybe it was a client or a friend of his, and the scent had just clung to the seat. There were 100 reasonable explanations for it. But as I closed the car door, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. That scent, hanging in the air, felt like a whisper. Soft, yet insistent, like it was trying to tell me something. Still, I pushed the thought aside. I wasn't about to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was nothing. The next few days passed in a blur of routine. I tried to forget about the incident in the garage. Mark was the same as ever, charming, attentive, and still as wonderful as he'd always been. The way he greeted me at the door after work, the way he kissed me goodnight before bed. He hadn't changed at all, or so I thought. But then, the late-night calls started. At first, it was just one or two. I didn't think much of it. He was busy, I told myself. His job had him tied up more lately. He had always been a dedicated workaholic. But as the days went on, the calls seemed to stretch longer. His voice lower, more intense. Sometimes he'd step out onto the porch to take them, leaving me alone in the house, wondering who on earth he could be talking to at such late hours. He had never done that before. Why couldn't he take the calls in front of me like he always had? I didn't say anything at first. It was still early, right? It could be a project deadline or some last-minute crisis at work. He had always been the type to get involved in every detail of his job. Still, the calls left an unease in my stomach that I couldn't shake. I tried to ignore it, to push away the thoughts that crept into my mind. But then the first trip came. A sudden, last-minute business trip to a city I'd never heard him mention before. "It's a quick thing," he'd said, kissing me goodbye as he grabbed his suitcase. "I'll be back in a couple of days." Something in his voice, the way he hesitated just a moment too long before leaving, unsettled me. He was always so confident, so sure of his plans. It wasn't like him to hesitate. Still, I told myself I was being paranoid. He had a busy job, and this was probably just a one-off trip. But when he returned, things seemed different. Subtle, but different. He was more distant. His smile wasn't as warm. The way he touched me, brief, perfunctory, like he was just going through the motions. It was small enough that I convinced myself it was nothing, but my gut told me otherwise. Something wasn't right. A week later, another trip, and then another. Each time, the same excuses, the same strange behavior when he returned. The late-night calls continued. There was a new level of secrecy surrounding him, and all the while, That scent in the garage lingered in my mind, like a constant reminder that I wasn't imagining things. I wanted to ignore it. I wanted to believe that everything was fine, that I was just being paranoid. But the pieces were starting to form a picture I wasn't sure I was ready to see. And yet, a part of me couldn't stop myself from noticing, couldn't stop myself from wondering if the truth was already staring me in the face. So I decided to take a step I never thought I'd have to take. I started paying closer attention, watching, waiting for something, anything that might explain what was happening. But what I would uncover would change everything. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was slowly shifting, pulling at the edges of my understanding. Each day, the unease grew, wrapping around my chest like a cold, tight knot. The scent, the phone calls, the sudden trips, it all added up to something I wasn't ready to face. But as much as I wanted to ignore it, to pretend everything was normal, I knew deep down that I couldn't. Not anymore. The first sign I found, or rather stumbled upon, wasn't much. Just a receipt tucked away in the back of the drawer in our kitchen. At first, it seemed like just another one of those random papers that accumulates over time. But then my eyes caught the date, just a few days before his last business trip. It was a hotel receipt, a luxurious one, the kind of place that Mark would never book for business, not unless it was a major conference or some event that justified such an expense. The location was unfamiliar to me, a little boutique hotel in a town I had never heard him mention. I froze, staring at it. My mind tried to rationalize, to offer explanations. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe it was for a colleague or a client. But even as the thoughts ran through my head, I knew that was a lie. I had never seen him book something like this before. The knot in my chest tightened. My hands shook as I folded the receipt and slipped it into my pocket. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe it meant nothing. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that something was being hidden from me. Something big. Over the next few days, I couldn't stop thinking about the receipt. I tried to focus on other things, on work, on the kids, on anything to distract myself, but the thought of what I might be uncovering gnawed at me. It wasn't just that receipt. It was the pattern, the growing distance between Mark and me, the small changes in his behavior. I found myself watching him more closely, listening more carefully to his words, his actions. When he came home from another late night out, I noticed the way he glanced at his phone, the way he quickly tucked it into his pocket before I could get a look, the casual way he'd say, "Just a quick work thing, babe," as though it should reassure me. But it didn't. It only made me more suspicious. The perfume scent, which I had initially dismissed, seemed to cling to his clothes every time he returned from one of his mysterious trips. It wasn't as strong as it had been in the car that first night, but it lingered in the air around him, almost as if it had seeped into his very skin. I couldn't pretend anymore. I couldn't convince myself that my fears were irrational. Something was wrong. Something was happening behind my back, and I was determined to find out what. I had always prided myself on being patient, on taking my time to make decisions, to weigh every option carefully. But this was different. I needed answers. One afternoon, as Mark was in the shower, I took the opportunity to go through his things. It felt wrong, like I was violating something sacred, but I had to know. I started with his jacket, the one he'd worn just the night before. I slipped my hands into the pockets, feeling for anything unusual. My fingers brushed against a crumpled piece of paper, another receipt. My breath caught in my throat as I pulled it out. It was for a florist, dated the day before his last trip. A bouquet of roses, expensive ones, not the kind anyone would buy for a friend or colleague. I felt the floor beneath me tilt. My stomach dropped. I couldn't breathe. The scent of the flowers seemed to fill the air around me, suffocating me. I tried to keep my thoughts from spiraling, but it was impossible. Every shred of evidence was adding up, each piece more damning than the last. Mark wasn't just working late. He wasn't just taking business trips. He was hiding something, someone, from me. I couldn't stay still any longer. I had to confront him. But as I held the receipt in my hand, I realized something. Confronting him now might only give him the chance to cover his tracks, to spin his lies in a way that made me doubt everything I had uncovered. What if I played this differently? What if I let him dig his own grave? I had no idea how I was going to do it, but one thing was clear. I was no longer willing to let him continue this charade. He had crossed a line, and now it was my turn to uncover the truth, no matter how much it hurt. I wasn't going to confront him immediately. Number I was going to take my time, watch carefully, and make sure I knew everything before I made my move. The thought of confronting him filled me with a sick sense of dread. I wasn't sure what I would say, or how I would handle the fallout, but the more I thought about it, the more certain I became that I was done playing the part of the trusting wife. I deserved to know what he was hiding, and I was going to find out. But as I stood there, holding the receipt, I had no idea just how deep the betrayal ran, or how much my life was about to change. I spent the next few days walking through a fog, my mind consumed by thoughts of what I had discovered. The receipts, the perfume, the late-night calls, the flowers. It was all there, right in front of me, but I still couldn't bring myself to confront him. Not yet. Instead, I became more methodical, more calculated. Each time Mark stepped out of the house, I found myself walking in his footsteps, retracing his movements, digging into every corner of his life that he had thought to keep hidden. I was no longer the trusting wife, the woman who believed in their marriage. I had become someone else, someone desperate for the truth, no matter how painful it would be. It wasn't long before I found myself at his office. I had never been one to snoop around his workspace, trusting that he was open with me about his professional life. But that had changed now. I told myself it was just for peace of mind, just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I waited until he had a meeting that afternoon, giving me just enough time to slip inside. The office was quiet, and his desk was cluttered with paperwork, old coffee cups, and half-empty folders. I started by looking through his drawer, pulling out papers at random. Most of it was unimportant, business proposals, old documents, contracts, but as I sifted through, I noticed something that stood out. A small, plain envelope tucked under a stack of invoices. My heart raced as I opened it, finding something I hadn't expected, an address, handwritten on the back of a receipt. It was a place I had never seen before, a place that, when I looked it up, turned out to be a private apartment in the city, one that seemed to cater to short-term stays. I ran my fingers over the paper, feeling my pulse quicken. This wasn't just some work trip. This was a place where someone could disappear for a while. I couldn't believe it. The evidence was stacking up, clear and undeniable. He was hiding something from me. Someone. The picture was beginning to form, but I was still missing the most important piece of the puzzle. Who was it? As if the universe was pushing me forward, I didn't have to wait long to get an answer. The next day, as I was walking through the grocery store, I saw a familiar face. It was one of Mark's colleagues, a woman I'd met a few times at company events. Her name was Emily, and she always struck me as friendly and professional. Nothing out of the ordinary, until now. I noticed something I hadn't before. She seemed too at ease, too familiar with Mark. The way she greeted me was almost too warm, too intimate, as if she knew me well. I felt the cold knot tighten in my stomach as I watched her. She was walking past the produce section when she stopped, glancing at her phone. She held it in a way that made me suspicious. Her screen angled slightly so that I couldn't see the message. I wasn't sure why, but the way she held it seemed like she was trying to hide something. Instinct kicked in. I couldn't just walk away. I needed answers. I approached her casually, offering a smile. "Hey, Emily, how's everything going?" She looked up, her face lighting up with a smile. "Oh, hey, everything's good. Just busy, you know?" I nodded, trying to keep my tone light. "I totally get it. Mark's been working late a lot lately." Emily's smile faltered for just a split second, but she quickly recovered. "Yeah, he's been pulling a lot of long hours. You know how it is with big projects." I could see it in her eyes. There was something she wasn't telling me, something she didn't want me to know. "So, what are you working on these days?" I asked, pushing just a little further, my curiosity taking over. Her eyes shifted nervously before she replied, Oh, just the usual stuff. Mark's been great about keeping everything on track. I nodded again, my suspicion growing. Something wasn't right. There was too much tension in her responses. It was almost as if she was hiding a secret, and I was just a little too close to uncovering it. Before I could press her further, she excused herself, saying she had to grab a few more things. I watched her walk away, her figure disappearing around the corner of the aisle. I had a sinking feeling in my gut. Emily wasn't just Mark's colleague. She was someone important, someone who might be at the center of this tangled mess I was trying to unravel. That evening, after Mark had left for another business trip, I found myself pacing around the house. The walls felt like they were closing in on me, and I was exhausted from all the lies and secrets piling up. I needed to know for sure. I needed to face the truth, even if it was the hardest thing I'd ever done. I went into Mark's closet and started looking through his things, his shirts, his jackets, nothing out of the ordinary. But then I spotted something new, a small, elegant necklace, silver, delicate, with a charm that looked suspiciously like a heart. It was tucked into the pocket of one of his blazers, and when I pulled it out, I realized it was far too expensive for him to have bought for me. My heart dropped. This wasn't a gift for me. As I held it in my hand, the realization hit me like a wave. Mark was having an affair. He was seeing Emily, the woman I'd trusted and thought of as a friend. He was hiding her from me. The truth was ugly, more painful than I could have imagined. But now that I knew, there was no turning back. I couldn't stop shaking. It was as though the entire foundation of my life had crumbled beneath me in a single, painful instant. Mark, my husband, the man I had trusted with everything, was having an affair. The evidence was all there, clear and undeniable. The hotel receipts, the late-night calls, the flowers, the necklace. Each discovery had carved into me deeper and deeper until I felt like I was barely holding it together. And Emily, the woman I had never thought twice about, someone I had invited into my home, trusted in my circle, had become the face of my betrayal. I couldn't escape the image of her smiling at me in the grocery store, her eyes avoiding mine as if she already knew I was onto them. I had spent days walking on the edge of this truth, not yet willing to confront it, to face the devastating reality. But now there was no denying it. I knew what I had to do. I had to confront him. I tried to steady my breath as I waited for Mark to return home. It was late, later than usual. The house was quiet, the darkness of the night pressing against the windows. I kept glancing at the clock, counting the minutes, the seconds. When the door finally opened, I stood there, still as a statue, watching him walk in. He looked tired, as usual, but there was something different in the way he moved. He seemed almost guilty. "Hey, babe," he said, dropping his briefcase by the door. "I didn't mean to be out so late. Work just—" "Sit down," I interrupted, my voice calm but sharp. I couldn't let him spin this anymore. Mark froze, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What's going on? Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, steadying myself. "No, Mark. Everything is not okay." I couldn't look at him. Not yet. My mind was still a whirl of emotions. Anger, disbelief, sadness. But more than anything, I felt betrayed. I had trusted him. I had built my life around him, and now it felt like everything I knew had been shattered in an instant. "I know about the hotel," I said, my voice steady. "I know about the receipts. I know about the apartment. I know about Emily. And I know about the necklace. You can stop pretending now." I heard him take a sharp breath behind me. There was a long pause before he spoke, his voice shaky. "Lily, No," I cut him off, turning to face him. "Don't try to explain. Don't make excuses. I'm done with the lies, Mark. I know everything." His face went pale, his eyes wide with panic. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but the words didn't come. For a moment, he just stood there, caught in the web of his own deceit. I looked at him, feeling the weight of the years we had spent together, the memories that had once felt like a solid foundation now crumbling to dust in my hands. My heart twisted, but I couldn't allow myself to feel sorry for him. Not now. "What do you want from me?" he asked quietly, his voice barely a whisper. "I don't know what you want me to say." I took another steadying breath, forcing myself to stay calm, to be the woman I had always been, strong, even in the face of this devastation. "I want the truth," I said. "I want to know how long this has been going on, and I want to know why. Why her? Why Emily?" He shifted uneasily, his hands trembling as he ran them through his hair. His eyes never quite met mine, and I could see the shame in his gaze. "It wasn't supposed to happen this way," he said, his voice cracking. "I never wanted to hurt you. It just happened." "Just happened?" I repeated, the bitterness rising in my throat. "You think I'm going to believe that? You've been lying to me for months, Mark. For God's sake, you've been seeing her right under my nose, while I've been standing here, believing in us, and now you're telling me it just happened?" He looked at me, his eyes filled with guilt. "I'm sorry, I don't know how it got this far. I never meant for it to hurt you. I don't know what I was thinking." I couldn't believe the words coming out of his mouth. How could he be sorry? How could he stand there looking guilty and helpless when the damage had already been done? "Don't give me that," I said, the anger rising within me. "You don't get to apologize. You don't get to make this about your guilt. What about me, Mark? What about us?" There was no answer. He just stood there, eyes downcast, as if waiting for some kind of mercy that I wasn't about to give. I felt my hands clenching into fists, the fury building within me. I had spent so long thinking that if I found out, I'd be ready to confront him, to end it with dignity, to walk away with my head held high. But now, standing there, all I could feel was a deep, raw need for justice. I needed him to know the weight of what he had done, to truly understand the hurt he had caused. "I think you should leave," I said, my voice low but firm. "I think it's time for you to go." His eyes widened as if he couldn't believe what I was saying. "Lily, please, don't do this. We can fix this. We can work through it." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm done." It wasn't an easy decision. It wasn't a decision I had ever imagined I would have to make. But standing there, in the aftermath of everything I had uncovered, I knew that I couldn't keep pretending anymore. I couldn't keep living in a lie. I turned away from him, unable to look at him any longer, and walked toward the door. As I opened it, I heard him call my name one last time. "Lily, please don't go. Don't throw everything away." But I didn't turn back. I stepped out into the night, into the cool air, knowing that my life, our life, was never going to be the same again.